and secure. And I believe your point, Jim, that if you don't believe in nuclear energy after everything we know it's about its safety, then you're not serious about serious climate change. I have run that very quickly to my schedule. I know you have yours. I look forward to our discussion. Thank you, Madam Chairman.
Thank you, sir, for your contribution to this debate. And now our next speaker is Marlo Lewis, and Marlo Lewis is a senior fellow at the Competitive Enterprise Institute. Welcome, sir.
Thank you, Chairman Boxer and members of the committee, for inviting me to testify today. Jonah Goldberg, the columnist, notes that the Earth warmed about 0.7 degrees Celsius in the 20th century, while global GDP increased by some 1,800%. For the sake of argument, says Goldberg, let's agree that all of the warming was anthropogenic, the result of economic activity. And let's further stipulate that the warming produced no benefits, only harms. That's still an amazing bargain, Goldberg remarks. Average life expectancies doubled in the 20th century. The human population nearly quadrupled, yet per capita food supplies increased. Literacy, medicine, leisure, and even in many respects the environment hugely improved, at least in the prosperous West. This suggests a thought experiment. Suppose you had the power to travel back in time and impose carbon caps on previous generations. How much growth would you be willing to sacrifice to avoid how many tenths of a degree of warming? Would humanity be better off today if the 20th century had half as much warming, but also a half or a third or even a quarter less growth? I doubt anyone on this committee would say yes. A poorer planet would also be a hungrier, sicker planet. Many of us might not even be alive. How much future growth are you willing to sacrifice to mitigate global warming? That is not an idle question. Some people believe we're smart enough now to measurably cool the planet without chilling the economy. But Europe is having a tough time meeting its Kyoto commitments, and Kyoto would have no detectable impact on global warming. 3 of the main climate bills introduced in the Senate this year would require CO2 emission cuts of about 60% by 2050. Yet the Energy Information Administration projects that in 2030, U.S. emissions will be about 33% above year 2000 levels. I submit that nobody knows how to meet the targets in those bills without severe cuts in either economic growth or population growth. But won't the bill's carbon penalties make deep emission reductions achievable by spurring technological change? I doubt it. Europe has been taxing gasoline for decades at rates that translate into carbon penalties of $200 to $300 per ton of CO2. Where in Europe is the miracle fuel to replace petroleum? Where are all the zero-emission vehicles? EU transport sector CO2 emissions in 2004 were 26% higher than in 1990. The Energy Information Administration analyzed the market impacts of a relatively modest $7 per ton CO2 emission cap in the Bingham and Specter legislation. The proposed cap decreases projected investment in coal generation by more than half. However, it does not make carbon capture and storage economical. Would a bigger regulatory hammer do the trick? No, it would just drive more investment out of coal generation. Regulatory climate strategies put the policy cart before the technology horse. Not until markets are capable of producing vast quantities of affordable energy without emissions would it be reasonable for Congress to consider mandatory emission cuts. Policymakers concerned about global warming should do 3 things, CEI believes. First, encourage worldwide R&D investment in non-carbon emitting energy technologies. This should be the focus of post-Kyoto diplomacy. Second, eliminate tax and other political barriers to innovation and capital stock turnover. And third, for a fraction of Kyoto's cost, target international assistance on those threats to human health and welfare where we know how to do a lot of good for each dollar invested. This could not only save millions of lives today, it could also help developing countries become wealthier and less vulnerable to climate-related risk. Thank you again for the opportunity to present my views, and I would